Hey, Eric, welcome back.
Thanks. A lot has happened since the last time we talked. I took a trip. You had a tiny life event.
Yeah, got married.
Oh my goodness. So at some point, we're going to talk about how you used Scrum to efficiently plan your wedding, but that'll have to wait till
You're
another.
talking to the wrong person. I'll bring Catherine in for that.
That'll have to wait for another podcast or another discussion or whatever this is that we're doing.
The Kanban approach to wedding planning.
Yeah, I want to hear all about it. Okay. Today, we're talking about an age-old argument, this management versus leadership thing. This is something that I remember reading about like back in college, and it's still going on. And people like to have what basically amount to religious wars about these two words and what's better and things like that. And what I've been seeing lately is it seems like management is losing the battle. It seems like everybody just wants leadership, and management has somehow grown into be a bad word. And maybe it's deserving of some of that. We can get into that. But I wanted to start today with trying to make the best case for what management is. What's the best argument for why we need management and why we shouldn't just give it this negative valence and bad connotation, or even try to delete it from our organizations? What's the best argument for why we need management?
Eric, I really do appreciate it. And first of all, I think this argument has raged on because it helps a bunch of people sell books and get a bunch of likes on LinkedIn and comments. And I do think you're spot on in the fact that leadership is running away with it right now, and according to the the published authors anyway. And I let me first make a veiled insult at the published authors making this argument. Is you make money in writing in one of two ways. You either tell people things they want to hear, or you tell people things they don't want to hear. And the
Mm.
first one makes a lot more money. And I watched, and I'm not going to call out names like Simon Sinek or Jim Collins, who constantly just give platitudes and tell. Oh wait, I said I wasn't calling them out. But to get to the point, management and leadership are vital for each other. You can't have one without the other and be effective. And I will tell you, you asked me to make the best argument for management, and
Yeah.
here's why. Leadership is great, and getting people emotionally and mentally ready for things is vital, and I'm not going to debate that. However, and I'm going to use a platitude to prove my point. You have a group of leaders that say, my door is always open, come in. Anytime you have a problem, come in. And then they also say, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. Well,
That sounds like good leadership, does it not?
that's leadership 101. Open
Hmm.
door and empower your people. But the problem here is, one, what you've just done as a leader is tell people, I'm not here to help you with problems you can't solve.
That doesn't sound like leadership.
And two, the other part of the problem is how do they know when they've run into a problem if there's not management involved?
Hmm.
And the idea of management, let's take whether it's the Scrum process or the lean methodology or the father of them all with W. Edwards Deming, any of those methodologies provides a structure for management that allows everybody to have transparency and insight into what needs to be done by when, and it empowers the individual in the how. Without that management, it doesn't matter the rah-rah speech you give or how emotionally tied your team is or how great the culture is. Without that direction, without those managed interactions, you've got nothing.
Okay. How much of this do you think is because the title that we give these folks is usually manager? And I think a lot of people have really bad experiences with their managers. And right now, the data actually shows that out. Most people quit managers, not companies or jobs. Management isn't I'm trying to be nice here, but like management isn't a thing that people get trained in very well. It's not a repeatable training process. Some people make good managers, some people do not. So do you think the problem here is really just that we call your boss a manager, and because people have bad experiences with their bosses, they think management is bad?
Yeah, and I think if you continue that a little bit, you have the micromanager, and that's what management, really people look at manage. "Well, don't manage me. I don't want to be managed."
Mm,
And so it's gotten that negative respect because of bad managers, to your point. There's not a whole lot of good management training, and there's not a whole lot of good management systems.
mm,
Let's take an example. Let's even take it to the highest level. You and I have sat on a couple boards together now. And in those board meetings, the management of those board meetings was sloppy at best. It was, let's come in, give your presentations. We're either going to pat you on the back or slap you on the head, and then you move on. And that's really what a lot of people think management and that's not.
sure.
And so I do think, and I have a strong belief that management does have a bad word because of the negative impacts. I think bad managers are out there. It has a negative belief because of micromanaging.
Sure. And we could say the same thing for leadership too, right? There are bad leaders out there that do bad leadership activities, or harmful, or not optimized leadership activities. But yet there still seems to be this adoration for leadership and this kind of condemnation of management.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know if I know the reason why, but can I tell you how I usually separate these two?
Yeah, I'm interested.
Without getting into the definition game, because that will just quickly get us a list of comments about how our definitions are wrong. I think there's some things that need to be managed, and there's other things that, if managed, perform worse. They don't get you the outcome you're looking for. So I think it's completely appropriate to say things like, we need to manage our expense process, or even we need to manage the workflow of projects across our portfolio. These are fine things to say we need to manage. But I think we go a little bit too far when we talk about the things we need to manage when it comes to individuals. Certainly, especially in larger companies, there are some just management things you have to do with your employees. And we should explain why we need to do these things, and we should not shy away from saying this is just a management activity that we have to do. Some whatever internal bureaucratic process that I'm sure we could get better at, but like, we have to do this thing for compliance or whatever. We don't have to give a rousing speech and motivate our people to want to go fill out the annual compliance thing. We can just say, this is necessary. I'm telling you, you have to do it. I'm the manager. You have
Wait,
to
are
do
you going to treat adults like adults and think that
it.
they
Yeah,
understand that sometimes you have to eat your
yeah,
vegetables?
yeah. I think I might. I think I might.
What
I mean, I'm going to try it out for a while and see how it goes. It
what
might be a disaster.
what's one thing that gets worse with management?
I think individual performance management gets worse with management. I,
What
I
do you
don't
mean?
think I don't think you can manage or goad people to become better performers by putting them on some sort of performance plan. And I think we do this all the time in companies, and it never works out. And sometimes, honestly, I think we're doing it because it's on the path to letting that individual go, and we have to do this. Okay, check your boxes, dot your I's, cross your T's, whatever you have to do. But I don't think it actually improves performance. So when we get into things that are really complex and have to do with an individual, all of the tools in my management tool belt, sometimes you can't pull them out right away. You have to think of other approaches and things that might actually move the needle on these things.
It's funny, and I'm envisioning the argument if we were sitting in a room with 44 management consultants screaming at you because that's not what managing and performance and plans are supposed to do. We do know that's what they do, and that's the
Right.
outcome. Here's, I think you
And
bring up.
stuff like that, whether it's performance management or not, it's processes like that reek of management. And it's, if we could extricate that from this idea that it has to be managed and we have to get you, a person, from point A to point B, or else, if we could extricate that from management, we could still perhaps use some of those same techniques, like all of the things that we were going to do to help that person. Let's just do those, and do it without the management overhead and structure and burden and things like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the burdens that you and I carry, if you will, is the undying belief that everybody wants to work and everybody has pride.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're wrong, but I sleep much better having that belief. And as we joked about treating adults like adults, if I've surrounded myself with people that are smarter than me, more capable than me, the only thing that I should be managing is the shit that gets in their way. So let's talk about some of the, you talked about that bureaucracy. Absolutely should be managed. However, the bureaucracy should be managed in a way where it's as little and as unobtrusive as possible.
Sure. Yeah.
You talked about, I forgot the word you used, but what I heard was motivating people to do their job. And here's something this is so overplayed, is the idea that managers and leaders are going to motivate people to the next level. And it's just
It's really interesting.
False. It's just false.
And it's one of the things that I think is probably going to change in the next decade or so. I think we know enough, or we're starting to know enough about psychology and neuroscience to figure out that managers probably don't have as much cajoling power as they think they do. And it's much more, maybe this is what people are complaining about, is managers think that they can cajole people and orchestrate everything from behind the scenes. But what we're really wanting and craving, and what the science says that we should be doing, is instead just paving the path in front of them. Or my favorite metaphor being tending the garden, right? You can't make the plants grow, but you can tend the garden. Right. So there's ways that you set up the environment around people that can perhaps get them to move in the right direction, the direction that you want. But managers don't have that much power to actually make that happen in some sort of conductor sort of way.
Yeah, and let's talk about what that managing the garden means, at least to me. And when I talk about sales teams, and by the way, motivation in sales is one of the most misunderstood, miswritten, and all of these authors still talking about stack rankings and commission driving people.
I thought for sales it was just you put a quota out there and they meet it. Wasn't it that simple? Because all salespeople are motivated by money. Is that right?
And by the way, I don't take away the fact that some people in sales are motivated by money.
Some people not in sales are motivated primarily by money.
And that is perfectly okay. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't need you to be passionate about the company and the purpose the way that I am, or the way that the leadership team is. You're not an owner. Go make your money. I'm fine with that. But if
we
you
construct systems, right? We construct systems where that's the assumption, right? And that's where management runs afoul of all this, because we construct these systems and we kind of blanket copy and paste this idea of how to run a team, but it's not individualized. It's not. It's management. It's bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I don't do the fancy graphics that you do, but if everyone pictures a Venn diagram here, and you have management and leadership, and that middle circle is really where people that want a growing company need to play. And your goal is clarity. If you want people to be motivated and do their job, you need to, first of all, get out of their way and provide clarity. Cajoling, taking care of that garden, can give ultimate clarity. And clarity isn't just about a leadership thing of direction and grade. Clarity is about transparency and where their work impacts other work, how their work impacts the clients, how their work impacts the internal client. And that's management. You have to have that workflow. You have to have that understanding of all the variables, and everybody has to be looking at the same map. Yeah. So you need the leadership ability to provide clarity, and you need the management ability to provide clarity. Then it's confidence. And I have confidence in a couple different realms here. First of all, confident that if you do this work, everybody else is going to do their work and we're going to reach this impact. And therefore, whether you're going to get paid, as a salesperson, if I go and close this deal, I want them to be served because that's the only way I get paid. I need confidence in the rest of the company.
Sure.
I also need confidence that says when I screw up, we're going to work on the problem, not on me.
And that's the big one, right? In a lot of situations, it seems like the goal of a management system is to point fingers or single out individuals or processes as the breaking point.
It's called train wreck management. It's what almost entirely all the U.S. management and org structures are based on. It's the idea of, if the train wrecks, who do we point the finger?
who's accountable, who's responsible, whose
Yeah.
job is this. Yeah.
And so as somebody that's out there doing thought work, and as somebody that's doing any type of work that requires variables or changes or true intellectual pursuits,
Mhm.
you need confidence that when things go wrong, and this is not a leadership thing, this is a management thing that says we have a problem solving methodology,
Yeah.
right? We have a way to attack the problem, and everybody has confidence in it.
I don't want to miss this, but what you're saying here actually is, as a leader or manager, one of the things that you have to have is confidence that your team can get there.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that confidence, you are very likely to try to put management systems in place in order to make sure your team takes every single step in the right direction. But if you truly can sit back and say, no, I have a good team. I hired the right people. I know that they can execute. I would hope that they could execute even if I weren't here. If you're truly taking that mindset, then you really have to ask yourself, why is this process necessary? Why is this process necessary? And in a lot of ways, it really does come down to confidence in your team.
Yeah, you said, why is this process necessary? And I look at it a little differently. I look at it, it says, does this process provide value? And would my client pay for that value? And if the answer is no, we need to find a way to eliminate that process.
Yeah.
And you said something here that I thought was pretty important, that the leadership says, let's go get everybody on board. Let's motivate the shit out of them. Let's give them a direction, and I'm going to lead. Well, management comes in and says, I'm going to create systems. I'm going to create processes. I'm going to remove barriers. I'm going to remove friction so that the range of people that can succeed in this role gets wider.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the largest problems that we have right now, is that the specific criteria for someone to succeed with a leader is so narrow because of the skills and the opportunity, the skills, the knowledge, the ability, and the motivation to do a specific role. Whereas managers can widen that.
Yeah.
A good manager can create processes that more people can do. And that's if you're not doing that, something's missing.
All right. I think we should go there on our next chat next week.
But I have so much more. I hate this conversation.
I know. Let's see if we can't tie a little bow on it. Like, this is a conversation that really looks more like an angry internet debate every day. It's been going on for 20 years. There is no solution. There's also no good definition. As soon as you start defining the differences between these two terms, you're just going to get in an argument of definitions and never go anywhere.
I agree. And if you don't have one, you don't have the other.
And a lot of the simple explanations just kind of fall flat. Like, the one that I hear a lot is like, oh, you should manage things but lead people. Like, that's an approximate truth. I think I could agree with most of that, but when you really get down to it, it's like, no. There are some management activities that are required, even when we're talking about people and teams. But maybe
I love that quote. What are you talking about? That quote is 100% right, because you're telling people a bunch of things they want to hear.
Well, true.
In other words, the target of that quote isn't somebody who's looking to become a better leader or manager.
I know I can always rely on you to tell me the things that'll really sell.
Well, the target of that quote is the employee who's pissed off at the micromanager.
Yeah. And
so now that book sells like crazy because this is how my manager should be.
Yeah.
But it has no basis in actionable reality.
Yeah. So moral of the story here, really don't care what we call it. We just want better. we want managers and leaders to do better. And probably if you're still using the same tools that you used 20 or 30 years ago, or maybe even 2 or 3 years ago, honestly, you might be a little bit behind. And it's time to upskill on your management/leadership abilities. Is that fair?
If you're not upscaling every day, you're in trouble.
All right.
And it's a tired argument. I'm glad we had it because I hate it. I'm glad we had it because anybody that tells me leadership's more important than management has never led anyone. And I don't know anyone that's told me that management's more important than leadership these days. But without one, you don't have the other.
Yeah. It's interesting how management really got a negative connotation over the years. So
I got a few names for you that might have led to that.
I think we all have our horror stories. All right, we're gonna cut this off before you start naming names, I think. So
All right.
all right,
Thank you,
see
Erik.
you next week. If any of you listening or watching, if there's a topic that you think would be interesting to discuss, leave us a note in the comments. And we'll see you soon. Jeff, congrats. Enjoy married life.
Thank you, and welcome back.
Thanks.
All
Bye.
right.